seated with somebody who is not affecting your smile, you're smiling with them. It's important when you sit in a conference to always interact, network. I'm happy that the cohort program gives people opportunity to interact from different cultures and the different ideologies, bring them together. We're happy that our DJ is also with us again this morning, and we'll be very glad to have our discussants or presenters take their seats. But we will start with Peter Paul, who is joining us online. Reverend Simon Massi again. For those who may have not been here yesterday, I work in the Department of Religion and Peace Studies, and I do the work of facilitation and mentoring the fellows too. Okay, let me invite Catherine Baimomogisha to take up a seat there, and then Thomas, I also invite you to take a seat. My brother Stephen Sempade, are you ready now, or you were thinking you'll reach after break? Where's Stephen? Yes. The beauty that our presentations are in, and it's your work that you did. You are making us appreciate it and also interact with it at this conference. I want to remind you that our personal convenience are just right above. When you get out, there will be another corridor on your left. You can use it. Allow me to invite the presence of God to be with us because we are starting a new day. Let me ask you to bow your heads, we pray, and then we will allow Peter Paul to start with the presentation for 20 minutes, and then we will interact later a little more in Q&A after all the presenters. God our Father, we thank you, and we now invite your presence to be with us. Your wisdom and courage that was upon your children when they are doing these projects, may that clarity come through this conference, and all of us be inspired in your work and in your word. That your name will be glorified because of the change that these initiatives create. At the heart of all things, we want to trust you for your peace and serenity to prevail in countries where there are no peace. That your word will bring comfort to those who are heartbroken. That your spirit will communicate through all of us. That as we trust you, we will always be strong and always be able to do your will. For this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So we're going to invite Peter Paul to present, and we are connected with him online. He'll be presenting Church and Community Radio for Community Dialogue, Platform for Peace and Development in Greater Upper Nile region of South Sudan. So Peter Paul, the next 20 minutes are yours. When you see a signal, we will be clocking the hour. Thank you.
Thank you. Have you uploaded it over there? You want me to use my PowerPoint?
I think you can use yours and share screen.
Am I with you all?
Yes. Yes, Peter.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, first, thank you for the opportunity to be able to present from very distant, very far distant, as I am now in this journey, which my name is there with you and presenting first. But having said so, it's very wonderful that to be with you being there. Previously, it was to do with church community ready, but we have altered the name. Now we have called this project the Voice of Peace for South Sudan. And it's a community radio project for education, dialogue, and peace building in both communities of South Sudan and Australia, but also in South Sudan. I'll be taking you through this very brief or this outline, being back on formation and problem statement to South Sudan, why we have this community ready. And the four pillars of perspectives that we have adopted to inform the nature and the work of this project. Then I'll share briefly about the disability study, the process that we undertook to engage with the community, what we have done in the process, but also how we manage to get away or even address some of the study. And then I'll share with you a bit of pain that model that has been used to engage with the potential and the stakeholders to pursue the work of the. And then briefly, just summarize the work and where we need to go. South Sudan, as you can see from there, South Sudan gained independence in 2011. But before 2011, South went through a very long civil war and started from 83, but also the subsequent sort of peace agreement being held between that is until 2005 when the comprehensive peace agreement was signed between Khartoum and South Sudan, the government movement. That peace agreement led to the independence of South Sudan through a referendum which was stipulated in the peace agreement. That civil war has led so many South Sudanese to go overseas, where I am, the United States, and so many other Western countries, but also in the region. Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, DRC, Sudan, and Egypt, just to sit aside and be their subject. But after gaining independence in 2011, after 2 years of independence, in 2013, the conflict made many of you have heard already. And that conflict has really tainted the social fabric of South Sudan, not only at home, but also in the diaspora. So why do we have this sort of community radio work? So we have seen that the conflict that in 2016 has very much divided the community, and that it has potential to disintegrate immensely community space. Therefore, through the contribution of the community, we have decided to create a platform for a community to promote peace and reconciliation among the South community. Not only in diaspora, certainly in London, but also in South. Through that platform, we were able to advocate for the unity of South through achieving national consciousness. And this national consciousness was national unity of South we see through the media platform it can be achieved, and that unity of South cannot expansion to start to be transparent. With this platform of community readiness, and also reminding that we could probably look at a positive story that represents the culture heritage toward this beauty that we need to bring among our. We also see this platform as so important where follow and promote cosmopolitan approach that is coming from differences between community parts. We see this approach of cosmopolitan approach as significant. The way we could bring the perspective of traditional conflict resolution model, but also make it fit with the local perspective of the sovereignty conflict that is issues that are focused to the community movement forward. We see a community radio that can really do that very part, but also engage in local community. This is to justify the importance of social media or even video platforms. It has been seen as a platform that can really facilitate extended people-centered approach to conflict prevention and enemies with people around the world. It is exactly what we are trying to do, focusing on engagement and dialogue together with local people, families, champions, a common goal for peace building and harmony. There are four pillars of positive peace that we have adopted in our endeavors to deliver this project has to do with free flow of information. We see the importance of communication, dialogue through a common platform that it can help the very diverse people that we find in need to see themselves as one when they are communicating. And we also see that with this platform, after communicating and sharing dialogue, the community will be able to improve their relations and prove that they can live in harmony with their understanding of the issue, but also focusing on the positive aspect of the engagement. When the community are engaged and having this positive impact in dialogue, we will see that we will have this sort of acceptance of other people. So they are very seem to be really communities that see themselves as part of time and sort of thing. And this is what the conflict is really brought to the community now. And these are what we're trying to encourage them to be able to accept right themselves or even your community. Having achieved
Recording in progress.
Having achieved this free model through the communication that is very open to improving the relationship and accepting their rights and even of the group, we could see the potential to improve their business and environment of engagement to also happen. Because the insecurity that is being caused by this feeling and fragmented relations in the community is affecting the sound business environment that can also enable the development that we have in the community. Because the outcome of this war undermines social character of the community. So having achieved that through this sort of platform that we're trying to establish, we believe that that people environment that the room will be restored, and that they can also work as one community. In the process of feasibility study that we undertook, we further identified needs that need to be. We have seen that a broken sort of communication and working relations between communities, and that the need to have a media platform where they can communicate freely is needed. There's the first thing that we have identified. And then we develop the concept in this community. And even promote the current peace agreement is the right thing. And we anticipate that this approach will enhance our capacity to attract more stakeholders in support of what we're doing to implement this project. We're very hopeful that this community radio, when it is delivered, will contribute to the nation building and community resilience and impact change in South Sudan. Thank you for your listening.
Wow.
I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Peter Paul. Indeed, there is power in the voice, and we are able to hear you and follow with your presentation. And we are also hopeful that as you implement that community radio, there will be really a voice of peace throughout the community of South Sudan. Ladies and gentlemen, I will ask you to appreciate Peter Paul one more time. Now, let me take this opportunity to invite Catherine. Catherine will be presenting to us local Council 1 officers championing the prevention, mitigation, and resolution of domestic violence in their communities. We're glad to listen to Catherine, our very own Vainomo Gisha. I believe she has interacted with communities in Uganda and our international community and all other. I would love to hear much of the indigenous experiences that Catherine interacted with. You're welcome. Take your next 20 minutes.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Once again, I'm Catherine Bainomdusha. I've been advised that to be shown shortly. The title of my solution initiative is Local Council Officers, Local Council 1 Officers, championing the prevention, mitigation, and resolution of domestic violence cases in their communities. To be specific, in UCD zone, Bukoto 1 Parish, Nakawa Division, Kampala District. I've been advised that the LC1 chairperson may be joining us. I'll be happy to see him. I want to talk a little bit about the dates that you see over there. I don't know why you're not seeing them yet. I want to talk about the dates of March to December, so that we move at the same pace. When I applied for the internship, one of the requirements was to have a write-up on the initiatives that I'm going to implement. So I was clear that I wanted to do something about domestic violence. And I had a SPC write-up. But actual polishing of that write-up started in March after I reported to materials. And it continued up to almost August, because the actual going into the field was in September. And the report was finalized after my as I get more support, I thought I should not stand here and speak to you without defining what a social change initiative is. Quite often we come to the podium and they just go straight into all this social change initiative without breaking it down. So what is a social change initiative? It is any purposive action aimed at addressing social problems, promoting social justice, enhancing access to opportunities, contributing to sustainable development. But at the end of the day, a social change transforms the underlying conditions that perpetrate violence, dominance, and injustice in our society. I thought I should define what a social change initiative is. And I provided a banner. I'm just waiting for support from that end. I provided a banner to summarize what it is that my social change initiative was about. I hope it can be displayed. It shows, that banner shows the effects, the multiple effects of domestic violence. Domestic violence is a health issue. It is a human rights issue and it is an economic issue. We need to see it from that light and appreciate it, appreciate how wide it is. And dealing with domestic violence helps us to contribute to the sustainable development goals, particularly development goal number 5, which is on gender equality, and development goal number 16, which is about strengthening the peace, justice, and peace, justice institutions. So when you look at the extreme corner of the banner, you will see the list of those. That's just a few of them to demonstrate that we have a rich legal and policy framework. But we need to keep on raising awareness about that legal and policy framework. That's why in the center, I was saying we need to do domestic violence awareness. On the other side in the middle, I talk about the pillars of positive peace. As a peace fellow, I no longer talk about peace in its ordinary definition. I categorize it into negative peace and positive peace. So I thought I needed to talk about positive peace with the local council officers so that they understand what their role is in promoting positive peace. So what is domestic violence anyway? It is a form of gender-based violence. It takes different forms, or it takes different, it manifests differently. It can be physical, it can be sexual, it can be emotional, verbal, psychological, or economic. Or it can be all of that in one. But what qualifies it as domestic violence is that it must happen in a domestic setting or in a domestic relationship. And largely it originates from the unequal power relations in our communities and in our homes. It affects us all, male or female. Many times I'm told, we talk about domestic violence, we're going to talk about. In 2021, I had to use the Uganda Police Force annual crime report of 2020 because that is the one that had come out at that time. And it showed a 29% increase in domestic violence as compared to what had been reported in 2019. And this was attributed to the COVID-19 lockdown. People were staying in, so close to each other that they were rubbing against each other the wrong way. Thomas. So what is the problem statement of my social change initiative? The problem is that despite having a rich legal and policy framework that spells out what is it that should be done in case domestic violence arises, who are the stakeholders, we continue to have the problem of domestic violence. If you look at the statistics from police, for example, you will see that domestic violence has been one of the leading crimes that have been reported. For the past 3 years, it has remained up there. We do have formal justice systems that are mandated to address domestic violence. But they are faced with challenges. The literature that has been reviewed shows that the people who have suffered from domestic violence feel that the formal justice institutions are technical, they are slow, sometimes the statistics don't reflect what has actually gone into it. So where should we go if we are having challenges with the formal justice systems? Can we look at the informal justice systems? Yes, we can look at them. And local council courts are some of the informal justice systems. What does literature say about the informal justice systems? It says that people perceive them to be closer, to be less technical, to know the problems that are on the ground. But are they working well? They also have challenges. And what are those challenges? The literature that was reviewed shows that a number of these officers who are mandated to address domestic violence, some of them do not know the scope of their mandate. Many times they exceed their mandate. You find them dealing with domestic violence cases which are not within their mandate, or shunning away from domestic violence cases which fall within their mandate. They have challenges around appreciating human rights. The gender biases in which they have grown up have circled them too much that they cannot appreciate issues of domestic violence and gender injustices. Do they have access to reference materials? No. So those are some of the challenges that prevent them from executing their mandate effectively, much as the communities feel that they could serve them better. So you'll ask me, why then did you focus on the local council 1 officers? I did focus on the local council 1 officers because they are grassroots domestic violence stakeholders who are mandated by the law to deal with a particular category of domestic violence cases. And I had read, the theoretical underpinnings showed that these people needed to be sensitized. They needed to be sensitized about their mandate. They needed to have access to reference materials. They needed to be enlightened about non-discriminatory approaches towards dealing with people who come to them for service. And they needed to be equipped with information about prevention, mitigation, and resolution of domestic violence cases, as well as record keeping. Record keeping is key. I was also compelled to focus on the local council 1 officers because I believe that each of their interaction with the communities is an opportunity for them to enlighten the communities. You could have asked me, why didn't you go to the members of the family where domestic violence happens? I couldn't afford to do that. I couldn't afford to go to every single family. But I knew that since these local council 1 officers are mandated and they interact with the communities on a daily, this is a platform that can be used to reach the people that I cannot reach. Another reason why I picked interest in the local council 1 officers, I felt that they needed to be equipped with the right information so that I can, in a way, touch their mindset. It is very challenging to have a problem, and you go to somebody who is mandated to deal with that problem, but his or her mindset is disabling him from helping you. For example, a man is battered. I'm using an example of a man so that you appreciate that I also am alive to the fact that men are battered. A man is battered in the home by the wife. He goes to the local council officer to say, I'm having challenges in my home. There is violence. And the local council officer, has this attitude of, what kind of man are you? Why are you saying that? So I wanted to deal with that mindset. That's why I targeted the local council officers. Or let me say a woman goes to the local council officer, and that officer has this attitude of, you have to persevere. No, I thought we should talk about those issues. That's why I went that's why I focused on local council 1 officers. So what was my theoretical framework? I started with setting out my goal. My goal was to enhance, it was and still is, to enhance the local council 1 officers' ability to champion the prevention, mitigation, and resolution of domestic violence cases in their community. And I put a rider, the ones which fall within their jurisdiction. So what outcomes did I desire to achieve? I wanted the local council officers, and I still want to. I'll tell you why I say I still want to. Because there are many. I just touched on a small portion. I wanted to enhance the appreciation of the domestic violence legal framework. When you see DV, that is domestic violence legal framework, for them to have a better appreciation of their mandates, to appreciate the kind of ethical values that they should uphold. They should be ethical in exercising their mandate. And also to understand, to appreciate that it is important to prevent. We should not always focus on, dealing with the violence after it has happened. Let's invest our energies in preventing, because we have the power to do so. And the benefits of preventing actually outweigh, they outweigh the benefits of, they outweigh the resources and the effort put towards dealing with violence after it has happened. So I wanted them to understand the relationship between domestic violence and positive peace. There is a there is a strong relationship between domestic violence, positive peace, and economic development. I'll explain later. And also I wanted to use this opportunity to give them reference materials that they can use as they exercise their mandate. So what were my expected outputs? I wanted to hold a participatory sensitization workshop involving 10 local council 1 officers, 4 community members, and 3 other stakeholders. Some of you are going to whisper wherever you are. That's a very small population. Yes, it is what I wanted as I went along. Initially, before April, I was so ambitious. I wanted to train 50 local council 1 officers. But as we progressed, I realized that I didn't have the resources. And I needed to do this within the time frame that had been set. So I scaled down. I scaled down to that, and I resolved within myself that I will start small and grow gradually. I set out to provide 20 compendiums of village local council specific reference materials on domestic violence to the participants. I set out to have 3 follow-up meetings, and also to personally administer follow-up questionnaires. Those were my expected outputs. My scope, I told you initially I wanted a big scope. Reality hit me and I scaled down. So I focused on UCB zone. It is in Bukoto Parish, in Nakawa Division. I had targeted 10 local council 1 officers. One of them was not able to make it. So I had 9 of them. I had 5 community members. You'll ask me why? If you're focusing on local council members, why are you bringing the community members? I felt I cannot talk to local council officers alone because they serve the community. I needed the voices of the community members so that they can kind of check them and also complement the discussion that I was having with the local council officers. I also brought on board a police officer because many times some of the cases that are reported to the local council officers are either referred to because of jurisdiction issues or because of need of support. It's a support system that is like a chain, and I felt that they needed to be involved. I had wanted to involve a probation and a social welfare officer. That was not possible. But at the end of the day, I also worked with the Rotary Club of Bukoto. They came in and they were part of my audience. And I'm happy that they associated with me, I associated with them, and we were able to learn together. So what was my methodology? First of all, it included development of reference materials specific to the LCs and identification of a participants mobilizer. When I talked to my host councillor, past president of the Rotary Club of Bukoto, about my social change initiative, I asked her whether she could help me get a mobilizer, a person from the community who can easily do the groundwork for me. She identified somebody who was able to mobilize for me. So I needed somebody
Recording in
to
progress.
do the groundwork for me, because I was going to work with a community that was going to be seeing me for the first time. It wasn't a community where I live, okay? So I felt that it may present some challenges for them to be dealing with me without a link. So the mobilizer was actually my foot soldier. Once she had done the groundwork, I went to the community and had pre-sensitization workshop briefings with the local council, one chairperson, with a police officer, with the owner of the venue where we are going to hold our sensitization workshop. And I briefed them about this social change initiative. I felt they needed to understand before we start the actual work. And then we also had a very participatory sensitization workshop. Why did I choose that approach? Because we had been advised during our stay at the first Capstone session that it is important, when you go to the community, it is important to understand that they have a wealth of knowledge. Don't assume that you're the only one who knows everything. They have a wealth of knowledge, they have questions that they wish to ask you, so you go to them, learn with them, and they also learn from you. So that was my methodology. So what were my activities and interventions? I've already mentioned some of them. The local council, one specific domestic violence compendium, the sensitization workshop, the follow-up meetings. After we had the sensitization workshop, I had to go back and get their views about what has transpired following the sensitization workshop. And after that, I also tried to seek financial support to see that this social change initiative is replicated. Let me take you just a little bit back and talk a little bit more about the sensitization workshop, because it was the gist of the social change initiative. During that workshop, we had several sessions. This mobilizer that had been identified by my host councillor was also a co-facilitator. So I made sure that she facilitates the first sessions, the first brainstorming sessions, where we talked about, first of all, the local council chairperson set the pace. He set the pace and gave us an overview about the domestic violence situation in his community. Then the co-facilitator, who was also the mobilizer, facilitated the next sessions, which were about the causes and the effects of domestic violence in their community. So the participants were talking to a fellow community member, and I was just on the side acting as a rapporteur. When the momentum had built up, when they had had their engagement and I had listened in, then I came in and asked them to share with me a case that they had handled from start to the end. I also asked them to take me through, to take me through what they encounter as they deal with their cases. I also want to inform you that whenever you are able to speak the language of the community, use it. There's no harm. We speak English, but this English may not serve the purpose when you're dealing with the local community. So when I went to the community in Bukoto, they largely speak Luganda. There were a few who were speaking English. But even those who were speaking English indicated that they could hear
but they may not be able to speak. So when we put the question out there, what language should we use? Majority said, use Luganda. So if you are able to see the writings on the blackboard there, they're in Luganda. And the language we spoke was Luganda. So my appeal to you out there, cohort 3, when you go out to the community, speak their language. Put the English aside, maybe for this kind of audience, but when you're in the community, speak their language. So we had them narrate. I asked them, narrate for me a case you have handled. And they said, we are going to narrate to you a case of marital rape. In our laws, we don't have a crime of marital rape, but they called it marital rape. So I listened in to try and understand. It was a case that was raped with the sexual violence, they called it adultery, abortion. It was a mix of so many things, and too much alcohol consumption. So they had a lot of information gaps. What they called marital rape was not actually marital, because the couple which had complained were not married, but in society, people assume that they are married when they are not married. We have many cohabiting couples. So they assumed that they are married, and there was abortion. In our laws, abortion is illegal, but we know that surely there are instances that deserve to talk about this issue of abortion for purposes of saving life. Okay? But I'm not going to that for today. I'm just highlighting that the case that was narrated to me had elements of what was called marital rape, it had elements of abortion, it had elements of alcoholism, it had elements of adultery. So it was a mix. They narrated to me from start to end. So I asked them, did you record these proceedings? They said, no, here we don't record. I asked them, did you charge any fees? They said, no, here we don't charge any fees. So we had a very detailed discussion of what the law says, explaining to them that marriage within our laws means this. If you're not within those 5 categories of marriages, you're not married. It was a lot of discussion, and they felt that the time was not enough. Then I explained to them the issues of abortion, the issues, so many. The explanations were really many. And the gaps, I tried my best to fill. There were lots of information gaps. I did my best, but they said, please come back. We still need to have a discussion over these issues. Okay. The picture you see there is just to show you that our sensitization workshop was really interactive. And I've already taken you through the activities and the interventions. So what were my findings? One of them is that there are information gaps out there in the community. There are information gaps. There are wrong perceptions somewhere. The gender biases are really still, existing, and they need to be addressed. That domestic violence is really continuing, despite the list of laws and policies that we have. So the social change initiative was very much appreciated. I was informed that they had been enabled to understand their jurisdiction better. Some of the things that I was being asked were actually outside what had taken me there. For example, I was asked whether they are mandated to administer corporal punishment. So we had a discussion about this, and I said they don't have the mandate to beat up people who come to their courts as a way of punishing them. Little did I know that after I had left, that became an issue, because they had beaten up somebody. They had, during the COVID lockdown, because of being idle, people were, watching pornographic material, including children. So they arrested those people and beat them up. And later, after we had had this discussion, the people who were beaten up actually said, you didn't have the mandate to beat us up. So they reported the case to police, and it became an issue. So when I went for the follow-up meeting, they said, you came here, you said that we didn't have the mandate to beat people. Now it caused us, things like that. But at least they said, we understand now that we do not have the mandate to beat people who are reported to the local council courts. They understood the issues of positive peace. I took them through the pillars, especially the pillars of free flow of information. Let me just go back a little bit. The pillar of free flow of information, it causes a lot of friction. When information is not flowing, it causes a lot of friction within the domestic setting. But also when information is not coming through from the leaders to the community members. Somebody has reported a case, and they don't know what is going on, and yet there are time limits. The issues of good relationship with neighbors. Sometimes we think that neighbors are the ones who live next door. No, even within the same household, you have neighbors. Somebody who is affected by your action or omission, that's your neighbor. Seems like I'm being advised that I'm running out of time, so let me go back to they understood the link between domestic violence and positive peace, as well as sustainable development. They were happy to learn that the law allows them to charge some fees to enable them do their work, but they were concerned that the fees are so meager. They asked me, what should we do about it? I said, this is an issue that requires an amendment. Please engage through your structure to cause an amendment. They were happy to learn about the issue of record keeping. In domestic violence cases, if there is no record and you're dissatisfied, just like in any other case, how do you proceed to appeal? Because one of the requirements is that you must have a record of the proceedings and the judgment. Yeah? So they understood that they have to record, but they complained to me that they don't have resources to purchase the stationery. So they tried, after they had learned that they are expected to write, when I went back for the follow-up sessions, they told me that they had tried to jot down at least what they could understand, what they could remember from the previous cases. They had appreciated the issue of dialogue and mediation. So during the follow-up sessions, a number of them had engaged in dialogue to talk about prevention and also to try and mediate and mitigate the conflicts that were happening in their communities. They informed me that they had shared the knowledge they learned, the knowledge they picked from the sensitization workshop with the members of their communities and the neighboring LC1 officers. Of course, they stressed the need for more training. I hope I'll be able to do that, resources permitting. So what challenges did I find? One of the challenges was was on the side of my being a Rotary Peace Fellow. The template for the social change initiative kept changing. It kept changing up to the very last minute. And for me, that was a concern, because I want to go to the community when I know exactly what I want. I have the structure. The structure enables me to engage and extract what I need. But this template kept on changing, and I think I was able to have the final way into, let's say, October. Could I do something about that? No, it was beyond my control. But I'm glad that we pushed through. We were guided. We kept on putting the bits together. And at the end of the day, I said, yes, we are the first cohort. Maybe this should explain it. Cohort 3, you guys are very lucky, because you have the template ready. You are seeing us, the first cohort standing here telling you how we did it. So you cannot claim not to have rubbed against somebody who has been through the process. You're very lucky people. Another challenge that I met are financial constraints. This has been said and stated by my colleagues. We were out here ready to go to the field. We were also still studying, because studying continued, online studies continued up to July. We were busy doing our work as organizations, So it was a whole mix of things, and at the same time, we were expected to be out there looking for funding. And the funding was not forthcoming. I made an attempt until I said, no, I cannot continue like this. I pulled whatever I had out of my pocket, and out of my organization's pocket, which I had not planned to do. But for the sake of, progressing and finishing in time. One time I was really stuck, and my colleague Rose came in with an idea which really helped me. So I'm grateful to Rose for the help. Another challenge that really, it was a challenge but also a blessing. It's funny to talk about COVID-19 as a blessing, but the lockdown, yes, it is. It was a challenge in that it disrupted our plans. But it was a blessing in the sense that we were locked down, and I was able to concentrate and do my reference materials. Remember, I had financial challenges. I needed to provide the local council officers with reference materials. Each small booklet, each standalone booklet is about 10,000, and I needed about 6 for each. That's 60,000 for each. And yet those pieces of legislation provide some other information which was not really focusing on. So the lockdown gave me time to sit down, extract the specific information from the different pieces of legislation, put it together, and prepare a compendium. So it was a blessing in a way. The other challenge is that the time that was provided for evaluating the impact was too short. I was in the field in September to implement, and I was back in the field in November to evaluate. Too short a time. Okay? Too short a time. Okay. Issue of sustainability. It was raised yesterday. Sustainability has 3 components. The community sustainability. Will your project be able to survive within the community? Has the community accepted it? Okay? These local council officers are mandated by law. They are elected within their community. And the structure is countrywide. So this project can be sustained in the community. It has the potential for community sustainability. Then there is the element of organizational sustainability. I manage a law firm. This morning somebody asked me, are you still practicing? Sometimes when you talk about, I'm a lawyer, the mind of the person who is listening to you goes to litigation. Legal practice has several arms. And as a peace fellow, I want to focus on prevention and less it with the legal background. Okay? And appeal to people to embrace alternative dispute resolution. So that I and the people I associate with, we try to reduce the number of cases that are going into courts. Courts are already clogged. Those who have interacted with courts know the pain and the resources, and it's a whole baggage. So I want to be this lawyer who is focusing on prevention, mitigation, and alternative dispute resolution. So in terms of organizational sustainability, yes, I and my organization have what it takes. Let's move to financial. That's where the challenge is. I implemented the project using my resources. Can I continue like that? No. I need support. I need external funding. And I've been making attempts to find financing. But I must also be very alert, because as lawyers, we have restrictions on advertising ourselves. The lawyers in here know it. You don't go out there and advertise. We have restrictions. And even when you get the money, we have obligations to declare it, because we are one of the professions that are listed that have got to comply with the anti-money laundering requirements. So I need financial support that I can easily explain as I continue to practice within my profession. Yesterday there was a question as to who are you seeing as potential partners. Ministry of Local Government is a potential partner. The district local governments are potential partners because these local council officers are within their structure. Ministry of Gender and Labor and Social Development are a potential partner because domestic violence is squarely within their, mandate. The police force is a potential partner. The civil society organizations are potential partners. For example, FIDA. There is a lot that I can say about domestic violence, but I just want to highlight that it is our responsibility, all of us, you and I, you cannot run away from this issue of domestic violence, because I believe out there, each one of you has interacted with somebody who has suffered from domestic violence. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Let us appreciate Catherine one more time. I warned you earlier that Catherine is going to speak to us from indigenous experiences. And those ones are not limited by time minutes. So, but for the purpose of us following through, we have to adjust. I believe as organize the upcoming Capstone Conferences, we will cater for the time a little more bit because the interactions are very helpful. Amire Sasa, our heads of departments in different departments in the School of Performing Arts, and want to let you know that while Catherine was doing the presentation, I was informed that we have some local council leaders and youth leaders amid SAS. You can wave to us and I know you're here. Wow, thank you. Thank you for accepting the invitation to come and listen to the presentation. And Catherine, I also want to let you know, amid SAS we have senior police officers and police officers who are part of our community, and they have taken interest in listening to the presentations here. The senior police officers and the police commanders. Can you wave to us? And we just wave to us. You know, when they are not in another uniform, we are very, very, very comfortable inviting them to wave. You know, community vigilantism is very much common in our communities. And what Catherine is talking about, creating a platform of sensitizing people, is very, very, very critical. Allow me also appreciate the presence of our partners from Kasese. A team from Kasese, where are you? Wow, thank you for coming, and we'll be interacting with much of your work, a little much more tomorrow, where that launch will happen. Now, allow me invite Thomas, who will be presenting to us the subject of tackling information disorder in Zimbabwe. Reimagining media and democracy. I love this. In a post-truth era. Are you coming with postmodernism theories as you present this? We'll be very glad to hear you. Put your hands together as Thomas comes to take on this. Thomas, you can do introductory remarks as that laptop keeps on, and I pray we can keep to 20 minutes.
Thank you very much, Program Director. At the risk of maybe acknowledging some delegates here, I would simply say all protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to be here to share with you my social change initiative, whose title is Tackling Information Disorder in Zimbabwe, Reimagining Media and Democracy in a Post-Truth Era. I think you agree with me that the coming in of ICT's new media platforms has brought with itself immense challenges of our time. Much as we have solutions that we can all be proud of, but we are battling today with a lot of challenges that have been brought to the fore by the coming in of new ways of communication, ways that we did not have before. Today, I'm going to talk about one of those challenges, which is information disorder. But what is information disorder? This term was coined in 2017 by a practitioner called Wald, who was working in the digital narrative to look at what were the issues of the day that were giving rise to the appetite of some governments to come up with harsh, draconian laws that curtail freedom of expression online. And that's where we began to see the use of terms like information disorder, which really is, simply put, information that is manipulated to achieve harmful or to achieve ulterior motives. When people manipulate information, when people manipulate facts, when they create information with a view, with a purpose to cause harm, to unleash chaos in the community, in the society, that is information disorder. There are basically three forms of information disorder that I'm going to talk about, mainly misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. And these terms are many a time used interchangeable, yet they don't mean the same thing. But I'm going to look at what these terms mean later. But the other aspect of it really is the post-truth era. What do I mean by this? This is a very exciting concept that we see encroaching in our space, especially now, popularized by the former USA President, Donald Trump, who opined that he believes that his facts, his truth were right, and those that were presented by other people were not necessarily facts, especially those who worked in the media, that he did not agree with. That's where we begin to see concepts or terms like fake news, and he's credited again for popularizing that term, because if he did not agree with what you wrote, what you said, he termed that fake news. This is not true news. This is fake news. But if you look at it and look at the debates and the narratives around what is news, what is not, what is fake news, can we say there is fake news, or there is news and the other stuff that is referred to as fake news is not supposed to be said news at all, to be referred to as news at all. So if you say it's fake news, but you are saying partly that it's news. So we begin to see, because of the information overload on these multimedia platforms created by new technologies today, a lot of people creating content online. We no longer have gatekeepers like we used to have in the past, where we would sit and watch news maybe at 7 o'clock or at 9 o'clock, and then we would know what are the events of the day. But today, citizens are potential journalists, hence the term citizen journalists. Everyone today can create, disseminate, and share content online. And people will tell you that what we are creating and sharing is our own truth. You might not agree with it, but for us, this is our truth. So truth then becomes a very contested term in today's information, media, and news world, because we have competing interests, people with competing ideologies. If you thought that this probably was a challenge in Africa, you would be happy to explore that, even in global leading media giants like the CNN. If you watch the CNN and you watch what's the other one? No, if you watched CNN and you also watch, yes, Fox News. Sorry, it was about to elude to elude me. Yes, the way they covered the same event will not be the same, and this tells you something, that this is a global phenomenon that is facing us today. It's not only something that we are battling with in our nations, in our continent, but it's a global phenomenon where people choose to see reality in a different way based on their own biases, based on their perceptions and what they want the world to see and how they understand the world. So you see that truth then becomes a very contested concept. Whose truth? And who legitimizes that as the truth? So hence, my social initiative really was meant to engage the policy community in my country after realizing that this scourge of information disorder was wreaking havoc in our media space, where there is a lot of polarization. You have, on one hand, media platforms that are pro-state, and on the other hand, media platforms that are anti-state. And in a situation like that, it becomes very difficult, really, to say which is true, and which is not true. But this has created not only polarization, but it has created challenges where citizens find themselves many a time on the other side of the law, where the state will not be happy with some of the pronouncements, some of the content they are creating online. I'm not sure if the laptop is working. Or all right, yes. So I've alluded on these three basic terms, that is misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. But what are these? These are at the core of our information disorder challenge. Misinformation on the extreme end is information or content that is shared unintentionally. This information many a time is incorrect. So if I'm on a WhatsApp group, I see an interesting piece of news, and I want my other members also to see this piece of information. I share it without verifying. But the belief is that this information is correct. And my friends or my colleagues or my family or my community must not be left out. So I just click and share that information. The intention is not to cause harm, but it is to share information so that other people probably can enjoy the opportunities or whatever that piece of information denotes. That is the first aspect of it. The second aspect is disinformation. This is false information, incorrect information that is shared intentionally to deceive, to mislead, or to achieve a certain objective or goal. So that's the difference between the two terms. And these two terms, first two terms, are used interchangeable, where people say he misinformed the public. When they want to say they disinformed the public. So you see these terms being thrown around loosely, misinformation and disinformation, but they don't mean the same. The first one, the intention is not to cause harm. I share it without intending to cause any chaos, any harm. The second one, I sit down, craft messages, craft content, share it with the purpose, with the sole intention to achieve a certain goal, that is disinformation. The difference is in intent. Whereas malinformation, the other aspect, is when I want to probably cause a reputational damage of someone. The intention is to cause malice. That's malinformation. But usually, the first two are the ones that dominate the space when we talk about information disorder. As you see there on the slide, no intent to deceive. Clickbaiting is an example, satire, parody, newspaper hoax. But I don't know for real that this is not true, so I share. It could be a job opportunity, by the way. I remember some time back, people were ripped off here when there was a post that was shared by some people who wanted to extort money from the public. So if you begin sharing that, you are not doing so because you want to cause harm. This is an opportunity that I would want to share with my colleagues. Then you begin sharing. That's misinformation. Then disinformation, again, just to emphasize, specific intent to deceive or cause harm is manipulated, taken out of context sometimes, and purely fictional, where there are biases, claims that are not founded on facts and truth. So that's basically the two extreme positions that we see in our society that have led to information pollution, to information disorder. But what are the challenges really brought about by this information disorder? Especially for some of us who work in the media, we are beginning to see that there is now an erosion of trust, lack of trust by the citizens. They don't trust the media anymore. Because many a time, like I've said, that if media giants like Fox News, like CNN, can be involved in this battlefield of information disorder, how then can people trust them? Because in the past, if you saw CNN, you would use that as a legitimate source and say, I saw it on CNN. I saw it on BBC. This should be true. But yet, these media giants, again, have been caught up in this battleground of information disorder. No one is spared. No institution is spared. Even media giants also suffer here. So the challenge also is that we are seeing a lot of hate speech that is in our media space. Because, like I said now, no one can say this is legitimate, this is truth. People can manipulate information to cause harm, especially disinformation, as we saw. People can create content and push it on these online platforms. And the speed with which that information travels now is at a very phenomenal rate. And let me also say that much as these terms are coming to the fore today because of the platforms brought by ICTs that we are using, they are not a new phenomenon per se. They used to be there before. But because those platforms that have been used to peddle, to aid the speed with which they travel, were not there. And today, they are in our midst, our gadgets. It could be my smartphone, could be my iPad, it could be my laptop. So there are potential weapons, again, through which people can create chaos, anarchy in the community. And that's what hate speech has done. If you look at highly charged political seasons like elections, where there is a lot of political banter that is being thrown around, you see a lot of hate speech that is being peddled and shared. And what suffers now is free speech, the freedom of citizens to express themselves. And that's the challenge that we're facing today, because if we don't have that freedom to express ourselves, if we don't trust platforms where we can go to for news, for reliable, credible information, then what suffers is the freedom of expression. We don't have free speech anymore. But because of the challenges of disinformation, misinformation, governments are coming up with harsh measures under the guise of regulating this unfettered freedom that is being used to cause division, anarchy, to create, in some instances, as we have seen, some conflicts have been as a result of the content that is being peddled online. So you find that there are cybersecurity laws that have been enacted in some of our countries, but in the majority of cases, these are still bills that are yet to be made laws, where citizens are going to be sort of gagged online under the guise of fighting misinformation and disinformation. But if you look at what Article 19 says in the Bill of Rights, it says that every citizen has a right to freedom of expression, to freedom of opinion, and that right includes sharing their content through any media of their choice. But again, it's a tricky balancing act, because as media practitioners, we are also reminded that some of these rights are not absolute, and many a time you see the state security aspect taking precedence over citizens' rights. So yes, you have a right to express yourself, but that right should not encroach on other people's rights. So some of these draconian media laws are coming onto the scene as a result of the challenge of information disorder, where governments are arguing that we need to protect our citizens, we need to protect our nations. This information disorder can cause chaos if it's unchecked. But to what extent then can you police the space, shrink the space, but at the same time giving the citizens the freedom to express themselves? So you see again that on the pictures there, especially the one where people are riding on hyenas and lions, yeah, those are images that depict the harsh draconian laws that are now descending on media, descending on platforms, social media platforms, where we'll see some laws that curtail people to share information that could be deemed fake news, information that could be deemed maybe in violation of state security and so forth. So in this intervention, I employed basically three methods. Those were through a summit, in-person symposium, in-person workshop. The first one happened during the height of COVID-19, and unfortunately, we could not have a physical event. We wanted to have a physical event, but we resorted to the online platform. And my mentor, who is here, Dr. Taeba, was supposed to be one of the speakers. Unfortunately, he was busy. He could not attend that. But this was a very exciting space in the sense that we were able to get participants from the country, from the region, and even some from Europe, from America. Thanks to the new ways of bringing people together, we are able now to come together without spending much. It was one blessing in disguise that much as we did not convene a physical event, we were able to harvest as many ideas from across the globe. And the main objectives of this summit really was to bring together government, media, civil society, academic institutions, to have a conversation, to have a dialogue on information disorder, and to harvest best practice that could inform our policy-making process, that could inform our laws. Because as a country, my colleague yesterday spoke about the challenges that we have around polarization in our media space, around issues of human rights. Some of the laws that we have are yet to be signed into law, but I took this as an opportune time really to engage various stakeholders who are involved in the policy-making process to advocate for pro-citizen laws that will make sure that much as the government is doing its role of protecting the citizens, but it does not take away their rights to freedom of expression, their rights to freedom of assembly. So our cybersecurity and data protection bill, which is still on the cards, was on the cards then, but we were very excited to have representatives from government all the way to the ministers of ICTs, Minister of Information, Media, and Broadcasting. And some of the recommendations that came here, which I will probably talk about later, were really taken on board. And they were very excited that even during a very difficult time that we found ourselves in, but we convened an event that brought together stakeholders from across the world who shared best practice, especially particularly on the bill that was on the cards, the Cybersecurity and Data Protection Bill. The in-person symposium was still during COVID, but towards the end of last year, when our government had begun to open up the space to allow for certain numbers of participants to congregate in functions. So we're very excited that the minister, her deputy, and the permanent secretary again graced this occasion. And also we had representatives from our media, Zimbabwe Media Commission, Broadcasting Authority of Zimbabwe. We also have representatives from the academic institutions, NAST, which she spoke about yesterday, University of Zimbabwe, and the Harare Polytech, these being leading institutions that produce our media professionals. Then the in-person workshop really targeted media professionals, our journalists, empowering them on challenges around misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. And they were equipped with skills such as fact-checking. We were happy to be joined by colleagues from Code of Africa that has worked extensively on the continent to empower journalists on fact-checking skills. How can they make sure that the information they are sending, the information they are sharing with their audiences is fact-checked? And we also had workshops that targeted community media professionals, because many a time these ones are left behind. They are not professionally trained, So the tendency is that the ethics that govern how journalists operate usually are not in their mode of operation. So it was meant really to empower them to be aware of the challenges that onto the media space now, especially that we have new bills, new laws that are coming, what it means to be sharing something that is not true, that is not authentic. And we're also happy to participate in a regional workshop that was also on making use of media and information literacy to tackle disinformation disorder. This was done in collaboration with a local partner here, that is CIPESA. Maybe some of you know it, Center for ICT Policy in Eastern and Southern Africa, that really created a space for media professionals to be given capacity in digital rights, but also on cybersecurity, data protection, fact-checking, as well as ensuring that the information they send out is authentic. But what were the key findings of these activities? The first one really is that information disorder is a global phenomenon and challenge, like I did allude to earlier on, that this is not only a problem we are facing in Africa, where we see that some of our countries now are putting in place cybersecurity data protection laws that will be very much infringing to some degree on citizens' rights to access information online. But it's a global phenomenon. Right now, I think the war in Ukraine is also bringing to the fore some of the issues that I hazarded earlier on the post-truth era. Whose truth? If you look at the reports that are emerging there, you see something coming from, say, CNN, BBC, saying that Russia did this, Putin did this. But also, if you consult other media giants like your CGTN and Russia Today and others, you see counterclaims. And as a citizen, you are caught up in this bubble, and you ask yourself, now, what is really happening in Ukraine? And there is a lot. I'm just giving Ukraine as an example, as difficult the situation is, really. But just to show that this is a global challenge we're facing today, where information is manipulated to achieve certain objectives. And the other finding was that autocratic governments see this challenge as an opportunity for crafting draconian laws that shrink civic space and freedom of expression online. I think one challenge that some governments face when ICTs and platforms that were enabled by the coming in of ICTs was that citizens had this newfound space that they could use to express themselves. They were not anymore dependent on mainstream or legacy media, which many a time was heavily policed by gatekeepers. It still is today, but they're also learning fast that they cannot compete really if they still embrace the old ways of doing things. So this citizen space that is enabling them to share information, to create content, to engage, to hold governments accountable, to demand, to see budgets and so forth, was not something that was welcome, especially in some quarters. And information disorder, like I did indicate, provides now a justification of shrinking that space to say, yes, you have freedoms to express yourself, but if you peddle fake news, if you share something that is false, you will find yourself behind bars. Some maybe even for 7, 10 years. And you know what that does to an ordinary person. Instead of me expressing myself without any fear, now I know there is someone who is watching on me, and if they decide that the information that I've shared is false, I'm going to find myself in hot soup. I think we've seen countries like Zim, countries like Tanzania, Nigeria. I think your social media bill also has created some panic within the citizenry and within the media, where people can be picked up, arrested for what they share. And terms such as disinformation, fake news are used interchangeably, and this creates confusion and further complicates the challenge. I alluded to the challenge of this earlier on. COVID-19 has compounded the information disorder challenge by bringing on board infodemic. Yes, during COVID-19, when things were really coming onto the scene for the first time, there was a lot of information that was shared. And people were not aware of some of the terms that they were seeing for the first time. And some platforms took advantage of this to share information that was false, and hence the term infodemic and so forth. But again, we saw some governments coming up with draconian laws to fight that infodemic, to say that we want to protect citizens so that they get correct information. And people in some spaces were not even allowed to share certain pieces of information, but only designated government bodies were able to do so. So these are some of the challenges that come onto the scene when there is information disorder. But also the last finding is that media and information literacy is being used in some parts of the world to combat information disorder. This also comes later as a recommendation where media and information literacy can be used to empower the ordinary person, the ordinary citizens, to interact with the information they come across with a discerning, with a critical mind, to say, before I share this piece of information, where is it coming from? Who is the source? Can this be a credible source? If disinformation and misinformation come onto the scene and find a critical thinking citizen, is not going to be a problem. And we're not going to have these harsh draconian laws, because the citizens themselves are very active. They can assess the information, they can evaluate the information before they share it. And this was being used as an alternative to the state-led regulation that was the preferred option by some governments. Recommendations create a national policy supporting online peace building instead of state-centered regulatory approach is still tied to the previous finding, where we are saying that take advantage of these online platforms, allow citizens to have conversations online, to have these dialogues online, but with a view of finding solutions around issues that are probably problematic today. We've seen in some countries where there are citizen peace clubs online, and citizens are engaging, they are involved in finding solutions collectively online. So instead of heavily policing or regulating the space, create platforms where you engage the citizens, you share the information. Develop an online peace building lab. I think we saw with the colleagues in Kenya, Ushahidi, when they started, it was used to map places where violence was happening. And if citizens have platforms online where they can map and share information regarding, it could be violence, it could be any issue, it can be used as a resource where citizens again, are actively involved in peace building. Then because the majority of the citizens who are on these online spaces are youth, the next recommendation is that we engage them in developing constructive digital media. If our young people are engaged by the state, different stakeholders, the media, even private sector, to create content that builds our communities, content that empowers communities, they can be viable and useful resources for peace building. And then journalistic due diligence and fact checking, I spoke about this. It was part of the workshops to empower journalists today on how they can fact check and make sure that the content they share is verified, is authentic, and they're not creating a problem. Then adopt a multi-stakeholder approach in tackling information disorder. Instead of going the route of state regulation, coming up with harsh, draconian laws, engage citizens and find solutions from their perspective, how they think we can tackle issues of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. Like I did earlier on say, media and information literacy can be a very powerful strategy used to empower citizens to be critical thinkers, to interact with content with a critical mind. And if we go this route of empowering our citizens right from a tender age, if you go to the global north, now some countries have adopted meal as part of their curriculum from primary school to tertiary level. So you can imagine if we go that route where our kids at primary school or even kindergarten are given these strategies to deal with information disorder, but at a level that suits them, all the way up to tertiary, then you would have citizens who are critical thinkers, citizens who are empowered to deal with fake news, misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. So it's a multi-stakeholder approach that brings everyone on board, government, academic institutions. It means you have to come up with a new curriculum and make sure that these issues that are coming in because of new ICTs and new ways of sharing, creating information, really affected in as well. Then the sustainability aspect, I should have said earlier on that I did this intervention with the support that I got from a CAS, that is Conrad Adenauer Stiftung, and the USA Embassy, working in collaboration with the organization that I lead, that is Zimbabwe Center for Media and Information Literacy, as well as CIPESA here, which is a local partner. I also worked with ACMA, which is African Center for Media Excellence, and actually the director there gave the keynote speech. So the route of collaboration, building partnerships, can be a very useful one, especially when working in resource-constrained environments like here in Africa. And this is also a recommendation that goes to our colleagues in cohort 3, that maybe you can explore that route of building partnerships and collaboration in rolling out your social change initiatives. Then collaboration with academic institutions in the country and in the region. I've mentioned some of them. We're right now in conversation with colleagues from Nigeria, Paradigm Initiative, CIPESA here, Small Media, and the University of Pretoria, to come up with a fellowship kind of intervention where media professionals will be equipped and empowered with some of these skills. Because when most of the media training institutions curriculum were established, some of the challenges we are facing today were not there. And there hasn't been a rapid review of curriculum as we speak. So we are in conversation with the University of Pretoria to see if we can have a fellowship that empowers media professionals in these skills of fact-checking, dealing with information disorder. Then media and information literacy for the general public citizens. I've spoken about this. This becomes one of the strategies that can empower citizens, but not only to deal with information disorder, but also to be critical thinking citizens who are able to access their rights, enjoy their rights, but with a critical mind of making sure that they don't infringe on other people's rights. So this collaboration really was anchored on two key pillars of positive peace, that is free flow of information and allowing the rights of others. If you look at what information disorder does, it pollutes the space. It brings harm to the community, to our nations, and that free flow of information is not there. And sometimes we invite draconian pieces of legislation that are meant to deal with these challenges. And once you have regulation or laws that impact negatively on freedoms of citizens, like right of expression, right to share opinion online, then there can never be a free flow of information. With this, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Let us appreciate Thomas again. Thank you, Thomas. The struggle you have when you are moderating speakers who are journalists. You don't want to also do misinformation. I think I did a misinformation in telling you about time. Thank you, Thomas, for that very elaborative and quite engaging project you engaged in. And like we interacted with patients yesterday, I believe there's great work happening in Zimbabwe in the spirit of really working on the projects of making journalism a place where you can influence peace and coexistence amidst conflict. I want to, with humility, invite you to stand and join me with our performing arts team that's going to guide us in the anthems. I want to also take this honor to recognize in our midst Dr. Thelema Aori. You are so welcome. Thank you for being our midst. I believe at a point when more presentations are going on, we'll have your remarks also at one point as you listen through. Let us join in the anthems.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to sing the Uganda National Anthem, the East African Anthem, and then the DJ will help us to play the National Anthem of Liberia. Our apologies, we couldn't find a score which was copyright free in time to be able to practice. Otherwise, you're welcome.
Uganda, may God uphold thee. We lay Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuwajibike, tuimarike, umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.
Liberia. Thank you.
Makerere, Makerere, we build for the future, the great Makerere, great, great and mighty, the walls around thee, great, great and mighty, the gates beside thee, great, great and mighty, the walls around thee, great, great and mighty, the gates beside thee. From east and west, from north and south, all voices singing, arise, Makerere, rise up and rise, high up and high, all voices singing, arise, Makerere, 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 we build for the future, the great Makerere, great, great and mighty, the walls around thee, great, great and mighty, the gates beside thee, great, great and mighty, the walls around thee, great, great and mighty, the gates beside thee.
Do not forget through all the years those who have gone through the gates of Makerere. Give them the pride, give them the joy, oh, to remember the gates of Makerere. Makerere, Makerere,
We build for the future, the great Makerere, great, great and mighty, the walls around thee, great, great and mighty, the gates beside thee, great, great and mighty, the walls around thee, great, great and mighty, the gates beside thee.
Thank you.
Thank you. As consulting something shortly, ladies and gentlemen, we believe in our audience. We have some community leaders and other community people. And Catherine said, when you are you want to reach to people, you need to speak to them in local language. So I don't know the community which I've gathered, but I believe they hear the Bantu. Basebene banyaba batogaseko, we are so grateful. Tusanyusa okubeera wamu nammwe era tusaba musanyuke era muwulire emirembe nga tuwulira emisomo gye baleeta gye tuli. Let us clap for them, those who are ministers. Now with great honor, I also want to invite Fakiri. Oh, Fikiri. Fikiri. Fikiri, don't close your border when I'm crossing there because I mispronounce your name. He will be talking about the issues of women trafficking through raising awareness, capacity building, and job creation among the vulnerable women in Burundi. We're going to listen to our brother, and then after we'll be breaking off with some music interlude as we go for break tea. You are welcome, sir, to take us through this. Let us put our hands together. We give him some energy as he takes over.
Thank you very much. My name is Fikiri Nzoisenga. I am from Burundi and a Peace Fellow, Cohort 1. It's really a pleasure for me to be here to talk about some of the activities we've carried out as part of our social initiative. So the main objective of this the social initiative we implemented was to contribute to the issue of women's trafficking in Burundi, because even if you are here in Kampala, I don't know if you've ever heard about this, but actually women from Burundi have been trafficked to some of the Gulf countries for a long time. And if you followed the news even last year, we had many news talking about how the police here in Uganda intervened to rescue some of the victims from Burundi. So, for example, on April 2021, the Observer in Uganda, which is one of the newspaper here, one of their title was 5 arrested over trafficking of 30 Burundian women. So this was one of those. And the same year in August 2021, another newspaper here in Kampala, their title was Police Rescue 8 Burundian Women, Arrest 2 over Trafficking. And it's not only in Uganda where we do have this news of Burundian women who are trafficked, even in Kenya. In 2019, for example, in March, a news of 3 arrested and 25 Burundian women rescued from human trafficking. This was in Kenya. And according to research in East Africa, the findings is that Burundi and Sudan are actually what they call the weak link in human trafficking in East Africa. So Burundi and South Sudan. So which means that many of the victims of women's trafficking here in East Africa come mostly from South Sudan and Burundi. And here I can try to give maybe one of the reasons. We know one of the drives behind women falling into the trap is because of their poor socio-economic situation. So if I can talk, for example, to about my country, Burundi, a lot of women don't have access to economic opportunities due to many cultural and social norms. For example, women in Burundi can't access the land, which is a huge disadvantage for those women. And we know all of us the importance of having land, especially in a country like Burundi, where almost 90% of the population, rely on agriculture for living. So when women are denied such an opportunity, you can see that they will really struggle to make a living, because they will rely every time on their husbands for most of their needs. So that's why my social initiative, I wanted to contribute to finding a solution to this issue of women's trafficking, because we know that most of them go there to look for jobs. They are promised jobs, but we all agree that if they can have economic opportunities in their country, it will be very hard for them to be victims, to continue being victims. That's why we came up with this socio-economic intervention for vulnerable women. And here we implemented this initiative in a place called Gatumba. And when I'm gonna give maybe some information about this place, maybe you will get the sense of why this social initiative really came at the right time in Gatumba. So this place, Gatumba, is at the western border between Burundi and DRC. And the history of this place, it used to be a place where people who were fleeing conflicts in Bujumbura, especially during the 1993 civil war in Burundi. Most of the people who fled different parts of the country used to go to Gatumba, which was so close to the DRC, so that it was easy for them to travel whenever the situation was becoming very hard. And also this is a place which is between Lake Tanganyika and Rusizi River, which is one of the biggest rivers going through Burundi, Rwanda, and the DRC. And as such, Gatumba is a place that experience, every year they experience, floodings. Floods every year come, especially during this period, especially from April. We have heavy rains, and because the place is near the lake and between the lake and a big river, we always have these floods that destroy people's homes and force many of them to leave their homes because of the floods. So, and also if you try to check this place, it's a very people are very vulnerable because of it's really a sandy soil which is not fertile, and most of the households rely on small businesses like fishing, because they can't cultivate, first of all due to the infertile soil, but also to the recurrent floods that come to Gatumba. And the other feature of this place is that, as I said, it used to be a place for internally displaced people in Burundi. And because it's near the border with Tanzania, we have a lot of smuggling activities and fraud, And also, this is where most of the trafficking between Burundi and DRC happen, because Gatumba is near the main border between Burundi and DRC. So most of these transnational crimes and smuggling activities happen there. And also it is mostly area base. It used to be area base for many rebel groups, especially those operating in eastern DRC. And for those maybe who used to follow what happened in Burundi, here in Gatumba is where in 2004, 166 Congolese refugees were slaughtered in a refugee camp. So, and I think even if you search on Google, you just type Gatumba massacre, you will immediately get this information. This is what will mainly appear. So you can see that Gatumba is really a very, the place is really not very good for people, especially women, because most of the victims of the smuggling, the victims of the floods that we mentioned are mostly women. And also, if you try to look around, you'll see that most of the victims of trafficking are from this place, Gatumba. So that's why we wanted to focus our efforts on this and try to contribute, something as a solution to this problem that we used to see here. So that's why we came with our social initiative. So as I said, the beneficiaries are women. So we worked with 408 women. So what we did, we divided. We normally work with small women's groups, what we call women's solidarity groups. Those groups where they do village savings and loans activities. So we organize those women into those. And the approach, what is the approach we used? So first of all, as I mentioned, we use capacity building, because the main objective is to give them the possibility, to move towards, economic independence, and also, to give them those, to create those economic opportunities. So that's why the approach we use combine capacity building, networking. The networking, it means that we take, those women, we link them to other opportunities around, from companies, from other stakeholders who could, have something to contribute. But also another component that we used is a small grant. We provide a small grant for those women, to have a seed capital to start something, after the training and also the networking. But also another fourth component is involving the media, because we know how important the media is, especially when it's about to spread the message, when it's about to really raise the awareness on all about all the issues that the population of Gatumba are going through. So this is the approach we use, because we even have a specific a guide, facilitation guide, that our social workers, use to go through with these women into this journey that mostly aims at, building their entrepreneurship capacities, so that they can be able to provide for themselves and provide for their families. So how did it go? Our approach with the 10 groups that we worked with in Gatumba. So actually, we organized from May to end of December, because we do weekly training with those women for 3 months. And after the 3 months, during the 3 months, through the skills we provided them, the women identify a goal, set indicators, and also think about a communal economic activity they can work on together. And what we do is, after they have developed, for example, a business plan, so they develop a business plan, so we do provide those small grants. But before, we organize 178 weekly meetings, because every week we must visit each of the 10 women's groups. From May to December, we organize 178 weekly meetings. We also organized 14 networking events where the women, could come and meet, stakeholders, NGOs, could meet local officials, and representatives of different institutions in the country. And also we had 51 media coverage. So what we do with the media coverage is from time to time we invite, the media, to visit, the places where the women have their weekly meetings, because we have meeting with each of the groups on a weekly basis. So 51 media interventions, where women, media used to come or invite the women to their programs. But also we provided 10 small grants for the women to start their own businesses. So here you can see, the pictures here try to give an overview. So the picture in the middle show how our weekly meetings, capacity building weekly meetings happen. It's a facilitated, they are facilitated meetings. On the left we have how the media have been involved, to come and hear from the women, but also on the right, the process of providing the small grant, which come to match the women's own savings to form a seed capital for them to start their own small businesses. So some of the impacts you can even see here from the pictures, how these women have been using these, to really start income generating activities, and also to have the possibility to provide for their families. So each of the 10 women's groups started a communal income generating activity that belongs to the group. But besides the communal income generating activities belonging to the whole group, each of the women has the possibility now to access a grant or a loan from their group and start their own individual activities. So for example, here you can see in the picture, one of the picture is a communal activity where members of the group decided to cultivate rice. But on the other pictures you can see that it's individual activities. One of the women is a tailor. She got a small loan from her group and bought a tailoring machine. And the other one you can see is a lady who chose to start, selling food. So now in the group, if we try to see what we have seen, after 6 months of implementation, we saw that almost 19% of the women have the possibility to access a loan on a monthly basis, which is really great. And also, as I said, we saw an increase of individual initiatives by the women, but also the women have done a lot of advocacy activities, because as I said, we involved the media, and most of the time when these women are invited or visited by the media, they take this opportunity, to raise the awareness on women's and girls' issues in Gatumba, which is really, really great, and we are really seeing a lot of change. And as such, because of this awareness raising, we have many partners, potential partners, people who are interested in our initiative, who want to join, as partners. So, for example, here you see this was a delegation from the U.S. Embassy in Burundi. They just heard about our initiative from the media, and they contacted us and wanted to know more about the initiative. So we had to take them to Gatumba, where they met the women, talked with them. And also from this visit, I can say that we were lucky enough, because the U.S. Embassy in Burundi accepted, to fund or to support more women's groups in Gatumba. So now from February, we started working again with 5 more groups, thanks to a financial support from the U.S. Embassy. So these 5 groups in Gatumba are going through our process, and I think I will keep you updated. So which means that our program is not only having an echo within the groups of women, but also outside. Because when we have such a delegation from the U.S. Embassy coming to visit, you know, wanting to know more and deciding to support, this really means that the initiative is really having an impact. And this is the new program that we have started with the support of the U.S. Embassy. We are working with 105 women who are, you know, from 10 groups. And also we use the same process, you know, we capacity building, weekly capacity building, entrepreneurship, awareness raising, women's rights. We also use, you know, networking initiatives where we invite, you know, and also I can say that if the U.S. Embassy decided to come there, it's because of these networking activities. And actually, some of our networking activities were organized within what we have in Burundi, American Corners, which are spaces, centers, you know, established by the U.S. Embassy. And if they give you the possibility to use such a space, it means that they are really convinced about what you are doing, and that's why they accepted to support this initiative, which we are implementing until now. And also, beside this, I can say that from this small initiative, it is, interesting more and more people, not only in Burundi but also outside of Burundi, and that's why my organization has been chosen, to introduce for the first time in Burundi what we call AWE, which is Academy for Women Entrepreneurs, because they really liked our motto, the motto we use. So AWE is an initiative which was created in 2019 by the U.S. State Department of Education and Cultural Affairs. So it has been implemented since 2019. Today it is implemented in over 80 countries. And for the first time from June, we are the ones who will be implementing this initiative in Burundi, which is really great, because we are really, it shows that what we are doing is really having an impact. And yes, so I think just I wanted to give an overview of how our initiative is having an impact, and how we have more and more people, coming on board. And also I can say that it's the right time, because in Burundi, even the government that we have today is really, putting an emphasis on, encouraging entrepreneurship activities among young people and women. And last year, Burundi established what we call a youth bank, so which will be providing, loans, to young people. And this year, Burundi started a women's bank, which is a very good opportunity for us, which again shows that even if we don't have, we might not have a lot of financial resources, as long as we can give the women the needed skills and organize this networking event, those women will easily be able to access, grants or loans from these financial institutions that have been established recently in Burundi. So, yeah, so I think in a few words, this is what I had to share as my social initiative. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Fikiri, for that great time. I love the idea which I was thinking through, that you have been really entrusted with the role. Let us clap for that. Let us clap for that. That tells you that if this initiative was not really started, or the project was not worked through, then you would not be visible, and your impact wouldn't be visible. And that's really the goal for really supporting the fellows to come up with the idea of social change initiatives. And everyone listening and everybody following through, you want to be encouraged that those small initiatives you start and bring them on board in a community, they make a great impact. They make a great impact. So don't sit on your innovation. Don't sit on your ideas and let them die like that. So let us appreciate all the presenters as we clap for them.
As we appreciate the presenters, I have the honor to introduce to you the mentors. Dr. William Tayebwa, you could wave to the team. And Dr. Charlotte Mafumbo. Catherine, is your mommy around? Dr. Veneranda Mbabazi? But your dad is not around. It's okay. So we are so proud of you. Friends, we are going to have just 10 minutes of break, and then we shall be taken to Liberia. Thank you so much, fellows. Thank you for making us proud, and thank you so much, audience.